adding several schools.
The whack.
The whack.
Okay.
Welcome back to Up Tempo on Sikkim 365 Radio.
I think Coach Gundy would be like my guy that I would just a hair.
Yeah.
I just want to be able to see it flow when I kind of slam his arm down.
Here's Drake Toll.
Welcome back into the Petty Clinic Low T Bears Den. I'm Drake Toll alongside Armstrong Sims and Jack McKenzie. Just joined by Coach Carl Smesko from Florida Gulf Coast. He was Nicki Collen's boss for 2 years, hired her onto his staff and said that, well, Baylor got a great one. That's a perspective of a coach that's worked right alongside her, but how about a perspective of someone who really follows the entire realm of women's college basketball? And that's I almost called him Coach Doug Feinberg. Basically, you might as well just have the title at this point. Doug Feinberg joining the show again today. Thanks for coming on with us as always.
It's always my pleasure, and you're not wrong calling me coach. I have coached high school sports for 27 years, so you just knew a fact about me you didn't know. All the Godfather stuff from months past. I am and have been a coach. I'm proud of it. And I'm happy. You can call me coach if you want, Doug, whatever works for you.
Wow. Coach Feinberg. That's a real thing from your past, Coach Feinberg.
And present, yeah. Past, present, and future, or immediate future at least. So.
Wow. And present. I didn't know. Okay. Fill us in before we get into the Nicki Collen news. Let's just have a little chat here.
Sure. I've coached girls basketball for about 20 years. I've coached track and field and cross country. And I'll tell you, and I don't want to talk too much coaching, but one of the nicest things, we started our season in April after the kids came back from spring break. It's the first normalcy we've had in sports in New York for the high schools for us since last March. And just the feeling was so great. And I'm sure, I've talked to coaches obviously in college and the WNBA, just having them around and having some normalcy right now. We're going the right direction, obviously, but for the kids, it meant so much to just be at practice and have the whole team there. That's just, to me, it made me feel good inside to have some normalcy that way. So,
wow. Bring it on. A little bit of some emotions coming in the first, opening up with Doug Feinberg. You talk about, man, that good feeling inside. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of Baylor Nation that missed that when Molly Miller's name wasn't announced as Baylor's head coach. That's been all the talk, oddly enough, that, man, did Baylor get it right with a name that a lot of people hadn't heard of? But I'll tell you this. When Matt Rule was hired as Baylor's head football coach, who took Baylor all the way to the Sugar Bowl, the same things were mentioned. But now with Nicki Collen, for someone like you that does know that name, give us perspective. Is this the right hire, a great hire for Baylor to make?
Drake, I said that on social media the other day when it was announced. I said that's a great hire for Baylor. I know we chatted probably, 7 days ago? I think it was literally a week ago when I was walking Central Park. And I said, this is going to be a big spot for them who they hire. Is it going to be, they still care about women's basketball if they hire the right person, or if they hire an assistant who hasn't gotten much experience at all, that says something different. And I did not know Nicki was going to get the job. I think that's a great hire. It's someone with experience at WNBA level as a head coach, but obviously, as you talked with your previous guest about, was an assistant in college, so knows the college game, and just brings credibility right away. Yes, she's not been a college head coach, but she knows X's and O's. She's a very big player relation person, and that she'll relate well to the players of Baylor. She'll relate well to recruits. That's what players have told me about her from her time in Atlanta, when she was in Connecticut as an assistant coach for the WNBA team, and I think going back to her time as a college assistant.
Doug, you mentioned the fact that she's not been a head coach at the collegiate level, and that's a conversation we've had on this show, and that's gone across a lot of the forums locally, and that's, we compared it to, you got a Porsche. Baylor women's basketball is the Porsche. While you haven't driven the Porsche, you've been in the passenger seat. You've seen it driven before. You're familiar with how it's driven, but now you got to get in front of it and drive it. What gives you confidence that an assistant, someone that hasn't been in that position, can drive it and drive it well starting next season?
Well, again, I think as an assistant, you sort of dabble in a lot of different cars, so to speak. You're not be the one in charge of driving the car, but you got to make sure that car is souped up as possible to run the best it can. She got to drive the car for the Atlanta Dream as the head coach. So she has driven, using this analogy a little bit further, at that level, but also understands how the car works, what you need to do to make the car be as it can go. And she inherits a pretty good team. So she's not in rebuild mode. So that, I think, is important for her to do as far as have that experience as a head coach, but also have been in the college ranks. If she just was a WNBA coach, had no college experience whatsoever, I'd be very much more concerned but she has been a college coach and has a pretty good course waiting for her right now in Waco, Texas.
Doug, you talk about it. She's got the Porsche waiting, and part of that for everyone here in Baylor is the expectation that comes year one. Nalissa Smith, Queen Egbo, Caitlin Bickle, Jordan Lewis from Alabama. The nucleus is still there to have a Sweet 16, Elite 8, or further team in year one for Nicki Collen. She's walking into that pressure. What does it say about her to take that head on?
I mean, she always has. Like, she inherited a pretty good team in Atlanta when she took over as the head coach there. And I think they went 23-11 her first year, which is pretty good, and lost to the Eastern Conference semis maybe. But she knows what she's doing. She'll be fine. She's fiery. I mean, she's not bulky. There's no question about that. Although their fashion game would probably be competitive because Nicki is a solid dresser as well. And their shoe game is pretty solid, I know, for Nicki. But I think that she'll be fine. I mean, she'll walk in. I don't know what their schedule is, but that Big 12 is not that strong in the year ahead. I mean, Texas lost a lot with graduation and transfer. And then after that, other new coaches, Oklahoma's got a new coach in there, and West Virginia's lost obviously some pretty good players. So we'll see. I think she's entering a pretty good spot that Baylor will stay near the top, if not the top of that conference, and be competitive in the national scene.
Doug, along with that, for our viewers that may not have a great perspective on the WNBA, a lot of folks have questioned that she has a losing record in the league, that she won really well the first year, struggled her next two through. I know COVID was a big part of that as well, and injuries. How volatile is the WNBA as a whole, and how much stock can you put in the fact that she has a losing record in the pro game?
I mean, I hate making excuses for people, but let's be honest. Last year was in the bubble. They had 8 players for the first half of the season. And that was not a spot to have 8 players to be successful in playing every other day. And then her star rookie, Kennedy Carter, who I'm sure your fans are well aware of, she went down with an injury. So your top rookie who's having a great season gets hurt, and you only have 8 players to begin with. That's a tough spot to be in for anybody, no matter who you are. So that's not good. And the year before, they also had injuries. So it's one of those things where you get the wrong players hurt, you're going to struggle, and it's going to be a tough year for you. So I don't worry about that. I don't think it's she wasn't successful in the pros, she won't be successful in college. They're different that way. And listen, on her team right now is Odyssey Sims, her team she just left is Odyssey Sims and Kalani Brown, 2 Baylor greats who, when she left, said, go get them, coach, and sick them. So they're happy with that move from the standpoint for Baylor. They're not happy that she left Atlanta. But if 2 of the greats of all time in Baylor are happy with her success and her going to Baylor, and they're happy with that move, I would hope the fans probably give the benefit of the doubt to her at the beginning.
Doug, along with that, I know she has collegiate experience. She's been in the game for almost a decade, whether it be at Arkansas, Colorado State, Louisville. Now being in the WNBA, back to college, what is the difference? How different are those 2 games between professional and collegiate when it comes to the women's side? So
I look at it this way. I mean, professional, it's a job. Your players are 9 to 5, so to speak. They're getting paid to be there. College, they're not getting paid per se, but you have to go out and get them. You have to recruit them. You have to sell your program to them in a sense to want them to come and play for you. The X's and O's part, I mean, it's basketball. Yes, there's subtle differences, but it's still just basketball. It's same in college and the pros, high school. You put the ball in the basket, you tend to be pretty good and win games. You stop people on defense, you tend to be pretty good and win games. So that part I'm not worried about, or it's not that different. I think it's just making relationships and getting players to want to play for you and want to come to Waco and play for Baylor. And I think Nicki will be fine at that. I think she has success. I think also, if you're a kid right now, she's coached in the WNBA. If your goal usually a lot of players from Baylor have played in the WNBA, you want to make it to that next level, who better to get you there than a coach who has had experience coaching at that level as a head coach and an assistant. So she knows what it takes for you. Hey, you got to work on your step back game. You have to work on your 3-point shot to get to that next level and be consistent there. So that helps, I think.
Doug, with the adjustment, we talked about that for her moving from the WNBA to the collegiate game, and it's a little bit, but it's still the game of basketball. Putting the ball into the net, playing good defense, and I want to start right there on our philosophy questions. When it comes to where Nicki Collen really wants to excel, is she a defensive coach, an offensive coach? Is Baylor going to shoot 25 threes a game like Finley at Iowa State? Where has she really shown consistency in how she coaches the game from a philosophy standpoint?
I think she adapts to her players. I mean, I don't think you can say, I don't know. She's still right now. We're going to shoot 25 threes a game. I don't think she'll do that unless that's what her personnel is good for. So I would think with the group Baylor has coming back, shooting 25 threes a game probably wouldn't be the best choice for them. But she adapts to what she has. And I think that's important to know that, like, you can have a system right now, but you're inherited, they're 10 to 11 players returning from last year, pending what happens with transfers and such. Yeah. So I think she'll look at the roster she has. She has an All-American and Alyssa Smith leading the way. So see what you have. Queen Egbo is obviously very good as well. And you see what you have, adapt to that, and still your philosophy is what you want to do against screens. If you want to play under, play over, if you want to be an up-tempo team versus slow the ball. I think she's more up-tempo coach she was in the pros. But again, that's personnel. So if you don't have players that can run up and down the court and get up and down in transition, you're not going to play that way. So I think we have to give her a little bit of time to see what she has and what she types to recruit. Florida Gulf Coast was obviously pretty up-tempo, up run and gun under Coach Semesco, as it still is. I think that we'll see. I don't, for me to say she'll be an up-tempo or she'll be a half-court coach, it's too soon to tell that. And I think, she'll adapt to what she has for the first year or so, because those are inherited players. And obviously they were very successful inherited players.
Doug, I skipped over a question I wanted to ask you earlier, and I'd like to go back to it when it comes to Baylor making this hire that is Nicki Collen. And I was looking, in the men's college game, I could probably name you 20 head coaches right now that people would consider elite. Going through like the Bob Huggins, the Bill Selfs. I mean, that list goes on and on. Even in the Big 12 alone, there are probably 5. In the women's game, it's different. There is an elite 5 to 8 coaches that you would consider to be in that upper echelon, whether that be your Vanderveers, Ariema, Kim Mulkey being up there, now Muffet McGraw out of the game, but you also Gary Blair's. Is Baylor not, because, Baylor's not getting that name, someone from the Power 5 that's had a really good coaching repertoire the last 2 decades. Should Baylor fans have reservations, the fact that they're not getting that name out of the women's basketball game, or is this just a product of there not being that many big names out there?
Well, also, there's the loyalty factor in a sense. They went after Coach Barnes at Arizona. They went after Coach Taylor at Georgia, both of whom are building programs up here. Like, they built, Arizona was in the finals for the first time ever. Coach Barnes just got an extension under contract, a well-deserved extension. Coach Taylor's building something at Georgia. So, is Baylor a better job than those schools? It has been in the past, no question. But Coach Barnes went to Arizona. So it's going to take a lot to get her as a bigger name, and I'm guessing is what we're sort of saying here, to leave her alma mater where she's just built them and gotten to the championship game and 1 point away from winning that championship game or tying it into a chance to win it, one shot at the end, to go to a school where you're not making a name for yourself. What's the best any coach could do at Baylor right now is sort of keep where they are, right? They're at the top of the mountain. They're one of the top 5 teams in the country. So you like challenges. I like challenges. What if they win 3 titles the next 5 years? That's tremendous effort by Nicki, right? That's Baylor fans would be ecstatic with that. But they've already won 3 titles before. So what is your goal in the end game? If you get someone who can keep you at that mountaintop, so to speak, I would think that's pretty good. And I think Nicki could probably do that. So, yes, they didn't get a name. They didn't get the fans' name they wanted, per se. But you got a really good coach, and that can potentially keep you where you are right now in the conversation for national championships and Big 12 titles. That's pretty good, I would think.
Doug, with that, the first 3 years, there will be expectations, pretty unrealistic expectations that most coaches we talked about it earlier on the show. When you hire a new coach, 9 times out of 10, you're rebuilding a program. Someone else has left your program because things didn't work out, and now you bring someone else in, even in a situation like Muffet McGraw. She was a legend at Notre Dame, but by the time she left, there were still pieces to rebuild there. Here at Baylor, it's a lot different. You're expected, hey, here are the keys, go out and perform. What are some realistic expectations that Baylor fans can set for the first 3 years under Nicki Collen?
I would think they've 11 straight Big 12 titles. So keep in the conversation to win a Big 12 championship the next few years. If not be the team, be one of the 2 teams up there. Make the NCAA tournament obviously is a goal every year, but for them, it's make Final Four, win national championships. They're one controversial call away from making the Final Four this year, and who knows what would happen if they had gotten that call to go their way against UConn. So be in the conversation to win a national championship every year, to me, is what a goal of a top-level program could be. That said, it's also, it's the success that Coach Mulkey and Coach Oriema and Coach Vanderveer and Coach Summit in the old days had created. Like, you go 35-1 or 38-1, and that one loss is in the last game of the season, feeling, oh man, that was a terrible year. Well, there's only one team that ends their season for the most part with a win. I mean, NIT, also you have that champion as well, but one that really matters. If you don't win your last game in the NCAA tournament, it seems a failed year for a lot of teams. And that, I think, is a great expectation to have, but also is unrealistic and unfair. That, like, you can have an unbelievable season and go 38-1 or 39-1 or 38-2. That's a great year. But if you don't win a national championship, which is the expectation that seems to be at Baylor and UConn and some of the other top programs, it seems like, oh, we didn't have a great season. Well, I'd like to evaluate what you consider a great season then.
So for her, the first 3 years, say that what are the tangible checkpoints? What do you need to see when it comes to postseason play, not just making the tournament? I mean, if she doesn't make it past the first weekend of March in the next 3 seasons, do you consider that, with her being at Baylor, a bust?
Well, this next year's teams be really good, right? I mean, everyone, I don't know the numbers of who's seniors, who's juniors, but I think next team is loaded right now, so no one else leaves, to be a competitive national championship contender, correct?
Right.
I would say Final Four next year is a good standard to make. Like, if you can make the Final Four, have a chance to win national championship, at least make the Elite Eight, then okay, that's what this team the minimum should do. After that, when you start losing people, it's what she brings in. So for me to say she's got to make the Final Four the next 3 years, it depends what she brings in. I think the cupboard is somewhat bare in the youngsters in Baylor. Again, I apologize for not being completely up on the roster, but you can fix that with transfers pretty easily now, it seems, for the transfer portal. But I think, again, making the Final Four next year minimum is something that Baylor's good enough to do, barring injuries and other stuff going on the outside. But other than that, Big 12 championship, be in the title game, have a chance to win the regular season and the conference tournament, those are realistic expectations for that school.
Last couple of questions here for you, Doug. This one comes on the end of recruiting. You talked about the transfer portal, which is very similar now to WNBA free agency. I mean, while the money is not there, women's college basketball, college sports in general, is becoming more of a business. I think the transition from pro to college with the transfer portal is going to be easier for pro coaches to make. Along with that, though, her recruiting pedigree, is that there? Do you, and what you see from Nicki Collen, will she be able to recruit? And what gives her an edge in recruiting when she's going up against coaches like Gino Auriemma, Kim Mulkey, and Tara Vanderveer?
I mean, youth is one thing. Like, listen, I don't know when people are retiring. I'm not saying that they're going to retire any point soon, but Gino and Tara are up there in their years, and Nicki is not up there in those years, and Kim's sort of in the middle of the two, so to speak. So if you're a sophomore in high school right now, our coach is going to be there when you're a senior in college. I mean, that's 6 years from now. Tara and Gino are both in their 70s at that point. And again, they may still be coaching, so I don't want to say that they're not going to be there. I'm not trying to recruit against them right now. But youth and experience, having been in the WNBA, knowing what it takes to make that next level, which a lot of Baylor players want to do and have done, I think is important, so to speak.
Doug, last question before we get to our Bear games. I got 3 quick hitters for the Bear games today that I'm very intrigued to hear your thoughts on. First one being, this being before the Bear games, culture. And the culture that Nicki Collen brings into Baylor. I know that's been a big star that folks wanted to check off going into this hire, was finding someone who fits that culturally. From what you've seen in media with her being in the pro game and as an assistant in college, where does she sit culture-wise coming into this job?
I think she fits pretty well. I mean, she's married with kids, has a great family around her. Obviously, her husband was a longtime successful college coach, so that she can sort of lean on him for a little bit if she needs to. I think she may keep one of the current assistants from Baylor, at least potentially, so that will help build that way, keeping that culture that Coach Mulkey's built there. I don't know that for a fact, but I think that'd probably be a smart move. I think it's important. I think that obviously there's been a wonderful culture built at Baylor for women's basketball. I think Nicki will do a good job as far as keeping what's going, been there in the past, keep it going, but also build upon it.
Doug, 3 Bear Games questions today here. The quick hitters. First one being, we did it yesterday, and I want to play it with you today because I feel like I'm very intrigued with your answer. We've talked about movies before. So this is a Rotten Tomatoes rating, 1 being the worst. It's a very Rotten Tomato. Of course, 100 being a perfect tomato. What kind of tomato is Nicki Collen? 1 to 100. What is your Rotten Tomato rating of this hire with Nicki Collen coming to Baylor?
I'd put it right now at about an 88.
88. So it's a Saving Private Ryan, Sixth Sense kind of deal.
Sure. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
I like it.
Movie as was Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, they're solid. I mean, you can watch them again. You can watch them back. It's not the Shawshank Redemption yet, but give it like 5 or 6 years. Maybe folks will have an affinity for it, and it'll work out even better.
Exactly.
Along with that, the second one being this is today's. When it comes to Nicki Collen winning over the locker room, what does she need to do, especially with such a senior-laden and solid core? What does Collen need to do from the first jump when it comes to winning the locker room?
I think listen to them. You're walking to, as you said, a Porsche. So see what the Porsche needs to run as well as it's been running and listen to that. I think that's important. And I said, she's been a player's coach. She's had great relationships with players where she's been. I think that will help her immensely with a senior-laden locker room.
Last one here for you, Doug. Scale of 1 to 10. 10 being the most confident, 1 being least confident in her WNBA record. A lot of folks are looking at that. 14 more losses than wins in her professional career. How much stock do you put in that, and how much does that make you worry when it comes to her being at Baylor?
You said 10 is I'm confident that it's not a problem or is a problem?
We tried to figure out earlier how the 1 to 10 scale works on this, and I think we're still a little confused, but I'll give you 1, not a problem, 10, it is a problem, her record.
I would put it as a 2 or 3 as far as it not being a problem. I think, as I said, she had some injuries to deal with. Last year was a mess for everyone with the COVID being in the bubble. I have confidence she'll be fine.
Coach Feinberg, always, and I mean it, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Gosh, man, why don't we do it every day? Why don't you just move down to Waco? I got an empty chair right here for you.
I appreciate that, but I do enjoy New York. I couldn't be out in this park today. It was raining today, but, I'm a New Yorker at heart. I'll always be a New Yorker, and I got to stay where I am, I think.
Yeah, well, the mob is centralized. If you move out, they'll find you. So that I know what's going on here. I know the real reasons.
Here's the other one for you. My friend Stephen Hawkins gave this to me the other day. The Baylor 2019 flag gave it out to the fans. I got it when I was in Texas for the tournament. Our local writer was nice enough to give me one of those. So for you to have support in the Baylor with the national championship flag.
Wow. We got a couple of those in the studio, too, and I think that value just went up by a couple of dollars as of the last week or so, especially you can get it signed by Kim Mulkey. That may be a feat now.
Yes, I would think that might make it a collector's item if you can get that signed.
I love it. Doug, thanks again for joining the show today. Always a pleasure, and let's do it again next week. I'm sure something big will happen in Baylor women's basketball.
It seems every week there is, my friend. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, you too, Doug. That's Doug Feinberg of the Associated Press, women's basketball writer covering collegiate basketball across the country. Doug, always solid perspective from Doug Feinberg, who has full confidence in Nicki Collen as the head coach and said this hire that who Baylor brought in to drive the Porsche that it is women's basketball would give perspective on how much Mack Rhoades and this administration actually cares about the sport. And with bringing in a professional, a pros pro, a WNBA coach of the year, that it shows that Mack and company really care about women's basketball, sustaining success moving forward, and keeping this thing as well-oiled as possible, that this hire that Mack Rhoades has made is a hire that shows Baylor cares about women's basketball, and that means something. They bring Nicki Collen in. They're not taking a risk. They're hiring someone that can win right away, and I love the fact that Doug Feinberg mentioned that staple day one is to go to the Final Four. That's a realistic expectation heading into next year, that Baylor should have a Final Four caliber team, national championship caliber team, should meet that expectation, and then anything less isn't necessarily a bust, but hey, you got it there. You might as well do it. You might as well go to the Final Four. You might as well perform at the level they should next season with a great core coming back. I'm Drake Toll. It's Armstrong Sims. We got Jack McKenzie in studio today. When we come back from this break, Ashley Hodge is going to join the show. Ashley's talking about Baylor's newest men's basketball recruit and recruiting in the men's basketball game, how the Bears are loading up their roster for next season. Another guard coming in. This one shot 44% from three last